Hi, you are tuned in to AWANI International. Here are the top stories for tonight. Bangladesh ousted leader Hasina sentenced to death over deadly student protests. And in Japan, stocks related to travel and retail fall as diplomatic dispute with China deepens. All that and more coming up on AWANI International. Bangladesh's ousted Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has been sentenced to death for her role in last year's deadly student protests. A Dhaka tribunal found her guilty of crimes against humanity. The verdict, delivered in her absence, prompted a heavy security response, with police moving in to disperse protesters gathered ahead of the ruling. The International Crimes Tribunal said Hasina ordered security forces to use lethal force during the 2024 uprising, which the United Nations say left up to 1,400 people dead, one of the deadliest political clashes in Bangladesh's history. Prosecutors had sought the maximum penalty, saying she bore ultimate responsibility for the systematic and widespread violence against civilians. Hasina, who fled to India after being ousted last August, rejected the ruling as biased and politically motivated. In a 5-page statement, she said she is not afraid to face her accusers in a proper tribunal and that her legal team will appeal the decision. Heavy security remains in Dhaka, with roads blocked and riot police deployed around the tribunal complex. The verdict comes as Bangladesh prepares for elections expected in February 2026 amid rising political tensions and months of unrest. Tensions between China and Japan continue to escalate. China's foreign ministry says Japan should retract what it calls wrongful remarks by the Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi. Relations between the two countries have deteriorated dramatically in the past week after Takaichi suggested that Japan's self-defense forces could intervene if a Chinese attempt to invade Taiwan threatened Japan's survival. Beijing said the comments have seriously damaged the political foundation of China-Japan relations. China has lodged and says it will continue to lodge formal representations over the PM's statements on Taiwan. Meanwhile, China confirms Premier Li Qiang has no plans to meet the Japanese Prime Minister during the G20 summit. Japanese stocks related to tourism and retail fell on Monday after China warned its citizens not to travel to Japan amid a diplomatic dispute over Taiwan. China, a major source of tourists and students, also advised its citizens studying in Japan to monitor security closely.
The sell-off followed Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi's comments suggesting Japan could take military action if Beijing threatened Taiwan. Department stores, including Mitsukoshi and Isetan, fell nearly 12%, while Shiseido, Uniqlo, airlines and Tokyo Disney operator Oriental Land also saw similar losses. Over the weekend, several Chinese airlines also offered refunds for Japan-bound flights. Japanese media reports that senior foreign ministry official Masaki Kanai will travel to Beijing this week to meet his Chinese counterpart Liu Jinsong to ease tensions.
Stay with us. More updates coming your way right after the break.
Di dalam setiap berita yang dibawa, konteks amat penting. Kami sentiasa membawakan yang tergempar dan terkini. Pastikan Astro AWANI menjadi pilihan anda, tidak kira di mana sahaja anda berada.
Welcome back. Taiwan will begin distributing millions of civil defense handbooks to households this week, a first-of-its-kind move to prepare residents for emergencies, including a potential Chinese attack. The initiative is part of Taipei's broader efforts to strengthen defenses amid growing military and political pressure from Beijing.
Lin Fei-fan, Deputy Secretary General of Taiwan's National Security Council, says more than 9.8 million copies will be delivered this week, with English and other foreign language editions to follow. He added that the government will later launch campaigns to help residents assemble personal emergency kits, noting that Taiwan is already facing hybrid warfare from China. The handbook instructs citizens on how to respond if they encounter enemy soldiers and stresses that any claims of Taiwan's surrender should be treated as false. It also outlines scenarios ranging from sabotage of undersea cables and cyber attacks.
The United States says it expects to finalize a rare earths agreement with China by the end of November, aimed at easing tensions over critical minerals and averting new tariffs. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says Beijing has signaled it will honor its commitments following recent talks in South Korea between President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping.
Under the tentative deal, Beijing agreed to suspend for 1 year certain export restrictions on critical minerals, while Washington dropped plans for 100% tariffs on Chinese imports. Rare earth minerals, vital for electric vehicles, advanced electronics, and defense systems, have been a flashpoint as US-China strategic competition intensifies. Officials in both countries say they hope the framework deal will prevent supply disruptions and provide stability for manufacturers reliant on critical minerals.
United States President Donald Trump has called on Republicans to support the release of files connected to sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, saying he has nothing to hide. The move marks a reversal of his earlier reluctance to make the documents public.
His appeal came after Speaker Mike Johnson suggested that publishing the Justice Department records could help counter claims linking Trump to Epstein. He added that Democrats were using the issue to divert attention from what he described as recent Republican successes. Photographs from decades ago show Trump and Epstein together, though Trump has long maintained that the two fell out before Epstein's convictions. More recently released emails appeared to show Epstein, who died by suicide in 2018, suggesting that Trump quote-unquote knew about the girls, though the context and meaning of those messages remain uncertain.
US President Donald Trump says Republicans are preparing new legislation to impose sweeping sanctions on any country doing business with Russia, with the possibility of expanding the measures to include Iran. Speaking to reporters on Sunday, Trump said the sanctions would very severely target governments that maintain economic ties with Moscow.
Trump, however, did not provide any details on when such measures could be formally introduced. He also did not elaborate on which nations could be affected or whether the proposed sanctions would apply to all sectors of trade. The comments come as Washington continues to pressure Russia over its war in Ukraine and seeks to isolate Iran over its nuclear program and support for regional militias. The push for new sanctions follows the US targeting India under the same policy, after New Delhi continued buying discounted Russian oil and expanding trade with Moscow.
The United States may open to holding direct talks with Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, marking the first sign of a possible de-escalation as Washington steps up its military presence in the Caribbean. President Donald Trump told reporters on Sunday that Maduro would like to talk without offering further details. His comments come as the U.S. deployed its most advanced aircraft carrier to the region.
You said Venezuela wants to talk. What does that mean?
Venezuela would like to talk. What does it mean? You tell me. I don't know.
You want to talk to them?
I talk to anybody. I talk to you, right? I talk to anybody. We'll see what happens.
The Pentagon confirmed that the U.S. Navy's largest aircraft carrier, the Gerald R. Ford, has now entered the Caribbean, adding to warships a nuclear submarine, F-35 fighter jets, and other assets already positioned in the region. The attacks expand a months-long U.S. operation that has included 21 strikes on suspected drug boats, killing more than 80 people. Early on Sunday, Secretary of State Marco Rubio said the U.S. will designate Cartel de los Soles, allegedly led by Maduro, as a foreign terrorist organization, accusing the group of working with the Venezuelan gang to move narcotics into the US.
Enrollment of international students in the US has fallen by 17% following the Trump administration's crackdown on foreign student visas. This follows a 7% decline in the previous academic year, with fewer students from China choosing to further their studies in the States.
According to Open Doors data from the Institute of International Education, students from China still remain the biggest contributors to the US economy and the second largest student group after students from India. The total number of students from India had risen by 9% after surpassing Chinese student figures for the first time in 15 years in 2024. Meanwhile, the report found that colleges are still working to attract international applicants. More than half of schools surveyed allowed foreign students to defer their enrollment to next autumn, with 60% citing their financial contributions as important. The US remains the top destination globally for international students. Total number of foreign students in the country rose 5% to about 1.2 million for the 2024 to 2025 year.
Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman will meet US President Donald Trump at the White House on Tuesday in a visit aimed at strengthening their long-standing partnership. Their talks are expected to focus on oil and security, along with broader cooperation in commerce and technology.
Defense, artificial intelligence, and potential collaboration on civilian nuclear energy are also set to feature prominently on the agenda. This will be the Crown Prince's first trip to the United States since the 2018 killing of Jamal Khashoggi. Both sides now appear intent on moving forward after more than 7 years of strained relations. Trump is seeking to capitalize on a Saudi investment pledged valued at $600 billion announced during his earlier visit to the kingdom. He avoided raising human rights concerns at that time, and that stance is expected to continue during this meeting.
South Korea has proposed military talks with North Korea to address repeated incursions across the Inter-Korean Military Demarcation Line (MDL). The meeting aims to establish a mutually recognized baseline for the MDL as the risk of military clashes along the heavily fortified border intensifies.
The South's Defense Ministry says many incidents stem from North Korea's frontline activities, with some soldiers repeatedly crossing into the South, heightening fears of confrontation. Seoul said the disagreements over the precise location of the boundary have also grown, as original MDL markers installed under the 1953 Arms Disagreement have disappeared over time. The two Koreas last held general-level military talks in 2018 and have met at the ministerial level only twice since 2000. The latest proposal follows President Lee Jae-myung's offer of broader dialogue, but Pyongyang has so far rejected all outreach.
Germany will lift restrictions on arms exports to Israel, citing what it says a stabilized ceasefire in Gaza. The decision, effective November 24th, will see Berlin reviewing back export requests by Israel on a case-by-case basis.
Government spokesperson Stefan Cornelius said the decision is based on a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas that has held since October 10th, alongside improved humanitarian access in Gaza. Germany, Israel's second largest arms supplier after the United States, suspended some exports in August amid public pressure over the war in Gaza. The freeze targeted weapons that could be used in Gaza but allowed systems deemed essentials for Israel's defense against external threats. Since the ceasefire began last month, health officials say at least 266 people have been killed in Israeli attacks, bringing the overall death toll close to 70,000.
That concludes AWANI International for tonight. Stay with us as we track the strategies and power shifts shaping the new global order. For more updates, visit international.astroawani.com and follow us on social media. I'm Cynthia Ng. Thank you for watching and good night.